welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast about other podcasts. Where each week we dive deep into a podcast. We have a book club style discussion about all the things that made us think. I'm Josh.
I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach.
And this week we are going to revisit 20,000 Hertz. So I remember this is one of Josh's recommendations back in the day, the first time around. And I actually was listening to Radiolab recently, and they featured 20,000 Hertz, one of their episodes. And it was actually this episode, the Booj. And is it Booj or Booj?
I'm guessing Booj.
Okay.
Because what is it, onomatopoeia that it's supposed to spell, like it's spelled
Yes.
kind of how it sounds?
Like buzz.
So I was listening to that episode, and it made me like remember how good this show was. And then I listened to like 4 or 5 more episodes since then, and the whole thing that I really liked about this particular episode was it kind of, like I said, it kind of made me completely not listen to trailers the same way. Like I've listened to trailers or watched trailers differently after listening to this episode. It's kind of changed my mindset.
This show has a uncanny ability to make you rethink one of your like core 5 senses.
Yeah.
I feel like we take sound and hearing for granted a lot of times, and you don't think about how much it plays a role in our lives, but then they point something out and how it's used so much, then you can never unhear it. And so the show's amazing, consistently amazing. I listened to a couple of additional episodes after this recommendation as well, and it's all fantastic.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times what this show does, for me at least, is it really highlights how much impact sound can have and how much it kind of drives your psyche almost, how much psychological impact there is from the choices people make in sound. And they do this across a wide variety of genres and applications, because I think the first one that Josh recommended was about video game sound, but this one is about movie trailers, and they will dive into a wide variety of topics on things that, like, because movie trailers, everybody's familiar with them, everybody can pick out the tropes once they talk about them, but it's not something that you're really conscious of, but you're aware of it once it's shown to you.
It's like a riddle. Like, it's like, as soon as you hear the answer, like, oh wow, yeah, it was in front of me the whole time.
It's one of the things you can't unhear.
Yeah.
It's like can't unsee, but hearing instead.
So what were some of the other episodes that you listened to, Josh?
So I listened to some awesome episodes. So there's apparently one that's one of his all-time favorites that was about space.
I was listening to that one on the way here today.
And so he went back and remixed it, remastered it, and basically took their interviews and basically cut in new sounds and redid the whole thing to modernize it up to where their quality is now, because it was one of their first episodes. That episode blew my mind.
Yeah, I didn't finish it yet, but they were basically what they did, Zach, is they had scientists that, based off of what we know about other planets, they talked about what the sound would be like on those planets.
Ooh, yeah, this sounds awesome.
It was crazy.
But the kicker for it was that basically sound doesn't exist on any other planets in a real way. The sound that we experience on Earth is unique to our atmosphere. Because our atmosphere has so much molecular density and atoms and things in it that we can vibrate with vocal cords and speakers, and like sound actually travels in our atmosphere.
Yeah.
Most other planets, it's just like low rumblings. And if you could make some sound, it wouldn't travel very well. So it was really interesting to hear them talk about that. It's almost like a fundamental like Earth experience to have sound in the richness and complexity that we have.
And I mean, Ridley Scott found this out on one of his classic trailers.
They mentioned that.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
And do they mention that in the Booj episode or
No, they mention it in the space episode.
Okay, so they mention that in the space episode, and they actually don't say that in the trailer. They just write it.
Yeah, it's just written. I didn't know that. That's
So
very.
It's such a well-made show, and there's so much cool stuff in there. And it's always looking at sound in a way that you wouldn't think about in your day-to-day life. So the other one that I listened to was the Mother of Dragon sound. They like parentheses sound at the end of it, so it was like the Mother of Dragon sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's the woman that did all of the sound effects for the dragons for Game of Thrones.
Really?
And they talk
A woman
about
made those sounds?
They talk about where she got some of the sounds from.
Oh, okay. I thought
No, she made them all.
with her voice.
Just Foley.
Like, wow.
So she went to a couple of different like animal conservation areas and like sampled a bunch of birds, and also she recorded bears like hibernating for like a whole winter and like went through it and like picked out different sounds. There's one bit in there where they talked about a what did they call it? The unapologetic bear fart, where it's this bear that's like grumbling and roaring and then it farts and then it roars again.
It made it mad.
It's amazing. It's
Please
so
tell
good.
me that's somewhere in Game of Thrones.
No, that's not. But like if you're
I
at
can
all
just visualize the dragon like roaring, and then you hear a little fart in the middle.
No, it's not in Game of Thrones. However, where she got the inspiration for Game of Thrones, some of the sounds and some of the things she did, amazing. And her whole story is super fascinating. Like it goes way beyond Game of Thrones in that episode.
Did they talk Jurassic Park at all? Because I think they did a similar thing with like the T-Rex sounds. You know, I think it was a lot of combination of animal sounds, and like obviously they mess with it, distort it, whatever else.
They probably have. I haven't listened to that episode. I listened to every little thing episode about that, but
They didn't in this episode of.
I bet you they probably have though.
So I listened to and then I listened to one on the 808. So the Roland 808, which is like the
Very,
classic.
very famous synth.
It's the drum machine that's in almost every single pop song you've ever heard. It probably has an 808 drum beat in it. Like it's crazy how ubiquitous it is.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of they had DJ Jazzy Jeff on there
Nice.
because he was one of like the early adopters
Yep.
on it. And they were talking about that and the kick sound and how the kick sound changed. And again, it's one of those things where once you hear it, you're going to just hear things differently from then on. It opens your mind and makes you think about things in a new way. It's one of the few shows that I've listened to that every time I listen to it, it's mind-blowing. It really is.
I think it's funny the ones that you picked to listen to, because some of the ones that I picked to listen to are
Totally different.
Shows our character differences. So one of the ones that I picked was plants that sing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like some dude found a way to make this it was some sort of like MIDI controller that a plant can control in some weird way. I don't remember. I didn't understand how it worked, to be honest. But different plants would make different noises, and it was really weird. And they had like basically throughout the whole episode, they were playing the song, quote unquote, of what the plants had done. It was really neat. And so there was that one. Like I said, I was listening to the space one on the way here. Classic cartoon sound effects. I thought that was really
Yeah,
fun.
that's a good
'Cause,
one.
I mean, you know, back in the day, that was definitely a big part of the cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of still is, but the cliches today, because we've got so many that we've grew up with and everything. Speakeasy and Here, which was that was the one I listened to today. It was about basically acoustics in architecture and in rooms and buildings and stuff like that. And the history of that's very interesting, about how like pretty much as far back they were saying even like they've even found more cave paintings in places that have good acoustics, because most likely those places were used as like a storytelling space. So like as far back as we possibly can go, we have
the earliest forms of storytelling.
we have proof of people being aware of acoustics.
It's such like it just shows you how amazing this show is, that it covers all these different topics and how important the sound is in each of these different areas. Like literally everything that you do, unless you're doing something that has zero audio or you're listening to something that's overriding the audio of the experience that you're doing, has a sound component that does impact your experience. And people just don't like pay attention to it until it's brought to the surface. And that's what this show does. And it's really, really fascinating stuff. If you haven't listened to an episode, go find one that you're interested in and check it out, because it's
It's a great
amazing.
show.
So many good ones. And I really, really like the host, Dallas Taylor. I mean, he's such a cool guy. And I found a little bio on their website. It says, Dallas Taylor first cut his teeth as a sound designer / mixer for networks including NBC, Fox, G4, and Discovery. He then went on to launch Defacto Sound, where he's led thousands of high-profile projects ranging from blockbuster video games and advertising campaigns to Sundance Award-winning films and major television series.
Is G4 the gaming channel they have?
Yep.
Is that still a thing?
I don't know.
I don't watch TV anymore.
That was like Attack of the Show was on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think
only
it's-
watch like streaming now.
Yeah, no, I think that show is, or that channel is primed for being a streaming platform. But
Yeah.
then I looked into Defacto Sound, and they are just a full-fledged, very professional, high-quality sound creation studio. And so kind of whatever type of high-level project you have, they will put together high-level sound. And it makes sense because this guy is clearly very passionate about it, and that's the person you want doing these projects for you, I think, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
So one more thing about this show that I found is amazing is they do it in their sound studio. So the audio quality of every single episode is top tier. There's a lot of podcasts with iffy or bad or mediocre sound quality. Their sound quality is noticeably good because they're doing it in a sound studio and they're audio engineers. They know what they're doing. And so every time you listen to it, it's just a very pleasing audio experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wanted to learn audio engineering and editing, like with really good software. I think those are two things that I would really, if I had the money to do and time. I think it's more time than money that I would love to learn professionally how to do those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, you can definitely tell that they are professionals. That's what they do.
Yeah, their show sounds very good, strangely.
So this episode is entitled The Booj. And what is The Booj, guys?
I said it last week, and I looked it up, and it's kind of hard to find it, but definitely one of the founders of this noise was Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan on Inception, because I remember when that trailer came out, it was so effective at that, because the Booj is that really bassy, like, pitch down, where it kind of just like drops out, and it's really bassy. And then Hans Zimmer also had he calls it a Brahm, Braahm, where it's like wow, like, because they did that a lot in the Inception trailer.
Yeah, and I love that they talked about the call and response there, which I'd heard both those noises, but I didn't realize it was a call and response. You have the Brahm, then you have the Booj. You have the Brahm, then a Boo. Like they kind of go back and forth and tie together.
They pair them.
And I very much so loved the fact that they talked about like basically our instinctual response to that noise being like this. It's a sound that kind of evokes danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read an article, it had to have been like a couple of years ago, about this, and that it was basically talking about how modern movies are giving people more anxiety and triggering people's anxiety because they're using these sounds that are like scientifically engineered to increase your adrenaline and like make you anxious. Like that's what they're doing. They are using these sounds to make you on edge, so you're feeling the movie in a different way.
Yeah.
And you're kind of on edge in watching the movie. You're like, oh, this is intense. And if you cut all of the audio out of it, it probably would be really goofy sounding and you wouldn't be in the same element. But
Yeah.
they use this to kind of make you feel it.
Speaking of that, they played actually 3 different trailers with like opposing themes. So like they did like The Shining, but they did sounds that were like a family drama, like a family comedy. So it was like, it's a dad trying to get some work done.
Yeah. That's
And,
kind of what that movie's about.
it technically
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
a little boy that wants to find his dad.
Yep. And they
There's
did,
weird twins that show up occasionally.
They just want to play.
and they did Elf as a thriller, which is
Yes.
great. So that reminds me, there's a YouTube, I guess it's a channel or some guy on YouTube that makes videos where he takes music videos and cuts out all of their audio and puts in like Foley work for what it would sound like if it was like not like the post-production audio.
I've seen this.
And it is super awkward. He goes out of his way to make it awkward
Yes,
and
he
goofy.
does. There's a lot of like mouth noises and like grunting.
Yeah, it's really, really funny.
No, but it also, okay, because everybody's so reliant, and they call it like the laugh track and like I can't remember what they call the soundtrack that it's supposed to like pull emotion from you. Cause like, okay, in a horror movie, you'll hear the music change and you know that something's about to happen. Or in like a drama, you'll hear like sad piano come in and you're like, okay, it's about to get really sad. But then there's some movies who just buck that entirely, and they're doing things like, okay, No Country for Old Men had almost no score at all. Just silence. Just the sound of
Nothing. Whatever's
violence
going on. Yeah.
or contemplation. It's just you sit there in it, and it's almost unsettling because you get so used to how these things have all become formulaic in a way, but it is almost unsettling when people mix it up that hard.
So I have a question. Are there any other movies that are standouts for you? Because I know you're a huge movie fan and you pay attention to all the details. Are there any other movies that stand out for you for doing something unique or interesting from a sound perspective?
I mean, personally, I like people that they really go for doing something different and interesting. So, okay, soundtracks, obviously The Graduate, one of my favorites of all time because it's just Simon and Garfunkel the whole time, just like classic songs. But another kind of more obscure one, Into the Wild, which is about the guy who goes to Alaska and just wants to live in a cabin up there. And I saw that it was scored by Eddie Vedder, who is the lead singer of Pearl Jam. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's an odd choice. But that movie has an amazing soundtrack to it because he kind of does like toned down. It's like folky and really like down tempo and interesting. So I like people that really go for something different. And another person I think does a lot of really interesting choices, and they mentioned him in this episode, is David Fincher, who does Fight Club, Gone Girl, The Social Network. He's doing, at least producing, I think he directed the first season of Mindhunter on Netflix.
Mindhunter's so good.
But he does really cool stuff, and he started working with Trent Reznor, who's from Nine Inch Nails.
Yep.
And that guy is an incredible, like, score, what would you call it, composer. Like, he's an incredible composer for these soundtracks, because, like, The Social Network, he did a lot of the stuff they were talking about in this episode, too, where he would, like, he has a lot of, like, song covers, but they're weird. You know, they're almost unsettling sounding covers.
Funny, that was one of the things that, like, when they mentioned, I'm like, that's so true. I have heard that in a lot of trailers, and I didn't even pick up on it. That it was, like,
I hadn't thought of that one.
Covers of famous songs, but that are very different.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was hilarious that they doubled down or tripled down on using a Belgian girls choir. And that's what they used
they went really heavy on that. They're all like, we want that choir to sing 40 songs for us.
We want the same choir. Yeah, we'll get that same choir to do it for our movie.
That's what's so weird about, like, I didn't know it was a thing until this episode, talking about the formula for trailers. It makes complete sense, especially now looking back, but apparently no one is original except for one person when it comes to trailers. Like, one person changes it and everyone's like, ooh, that worked. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I need that exact same voiceover guy.
Honestly, I have a hard time thinking of a more effective trailer than what they did on The Dark Knight, where they literally released the cold open of The Dark Knight. The first 5 minutes of that movie. Did you guys remember that? They show the bank robbery scene with the Joker when you first meet the Joker. They put out that clip. Was the first trailer I remember seeing of that movie.
I do remember that part.
The whole bank heist where the Joker shows up at the very end, and I was hyped. Like, I was hyped for that movie immediately. I had no idea plot-wise, anything, where the movie was going. So I 100% agree that these people that like to mix it up, people are going to try and copy it, but there's always those people who do it effectively, and they figure out how to do it, and it can be very effective.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it's awesome to see that even in an industry where there is so much homogeny and there's so much where everybody's trying to do the same thing, it becomes formulaic. Still, the people who are going to reach deep within themselves and try and find something new and interesting and an effective way to show what their content is can still break through.
That's exactly where I was going with it, is that the movie industry is notoriously bad about not doing anything new. They're basically saying, oh, well, the data shows this movie did good, so we'll basically do the same formula as that movie and make the same thing. And it happens consistently. There's sequels galore, there's remakes, there's reboots, there's, like, it's constantly, like, there'll be a trend, and then for the next 5 years, good luck. Everything for the next 5 years is going to be that formula. And if you don't like that formula, good luck finding something you enjoy, because it's going to be not mainstream. And there's stuff you can find, but all the mainstream is going to be the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I love Disney, but I've already made the decision. I will not let my kids, and I will not go watch another live action movie that they put out, because I am so tired of that crap. Because they're like, oh, look, we don't have to spend any time or money making a new script. We will just make that exact same script and screenplay, just with some CG.
The funny thing is they're probably spending a lot of time and money rewriting those scripts for live action. They're probably spent, like, the
Lion King was story. Word for word the same script.
Really?
Yes.
It's crazy.
I didn't watch it because
I heard it was really good.
It's the thing. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it.
I've seen The Lion King though. That's always my problem with it, because like they
got a bunch of actors and stuff, and the songs were sung by different people, but
the cast is amazing.
It is. Yeah, I'll give you that.
But I just feel like there's so many talented original writers and ideas out there that to just literally rehash the exact same thing, like, yeah, you change the visual format, but like, and they're close enough to Pixar that like you can see that you can make interesting new content, because Pixar constantly is putting out. Because if you look at WALL-E, sure, Toy Story they're looking at number 4 now, but like you look at the first Toy Story, you look at WALL-E, you look at Up, you look at Coco. These are all original ideas where they spent time to write something that was, and even like culturally, it moved around to different places and they explored different entire cultures and perspectives. And it's so effective because it's
original.
Yeah. But the problem is, how much did Coco make compared to Avengers 7 or whatever? Like, it was like Marvel, like comic book superhero movie number 27 or whatever it was.
Yeah, or like Transformers 4.
Right. So it's one of those things where when they do sequels, it's a sure thing to make a buttload of money.
For now. You know what I mean? I feel like we live in a time where people are very information, like, everybody has a wide variety of information available constantly. And so I think that at some point people will pick up that they're just rehashing and putting things out constantly that aren't trying to push the envelope at all. And so I think that over time people will start to appreciate more niche things. And I mean, honestly, that's what's cool about this podcast. There's tons of podcasts about just movie reviews or whatever else, but these guys have found a perfect little segment that's specialized and almost overlooked, and they hone in on it with passion, and it makes it really cool and really interesting to explore what they're talking about. And it really does change your perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Speaking of sound, there are some sounds that just like, I don't know, they just can trigger something inside you, whether it be happiness or anger or sadness. And we were talking about that earlier, is like, let's say you set your alarm in the morning to a default sound on your phone, but someone else uses that as their ringtone, and you hear it, and you just immediately are like, "Oh my gosh, I hate that sound." Because that's what I have to wake.
It's like a mini panic attack. You're like, "Oh, what am I supposed to be doing?"
And it's like that Pavlov effect, where they literally rang a bell and the dog's mouth would start watering because it wanted a treat. So it's that same thing, only it happens to us as humans. Speaking of alarms, my alarm is still "Chicken in the Corn" by Brushy One String. That's my alarm every morning.
I still remember Mindless Self-Indulgence.
Oh, God. I forgot that was my alarm for a long time.
It was the most obnoxious alarm of all time.
I also had Sequoia Throne by Protest the Hero.
I could get more behind that. I like that song. But that Mindless Self-Indulgence song, I can't even say the name of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really does kind of stick with you. Once you've had something be your alarm long enough, it becomes almost a torturous experience to hear it.
It definitely does.
Or like an old, a song from high school. Just literally, it's like a time machine. You will immediately go back to that time when that song meant something to you at the time. And
the whole album Ocean Avenue by Yellow Card. If I listen to that album, it literally takes me right back to high school.
I feel like I'm riding in the van again all over again.
Oh yeah.
The one that triggers me is there's a set of about 15 or 20 songs that they play on repeat at Publix. And I worked overnight shifts for long enough where literally it's completely dead quiet in the store except for those songs. And so I'm working overnights and working long hours. And so it was completely silent working overnights. And it's all it is this soundtrack of like 15 or 20 songs that they played over and over and over again.
Some were good, but yeah, I got earbuds real quick.
They're not bad songs. I never got earbuds. I struggle wearing earbuds or headphones while trying to do things. And
I wear earbuds 95% of my life.
Yeah, it makes things difficult for me because I like to have kind of be able to hear what's going on. Like, I don't know. It's just, I've never been able to just put in earbuds and tune things out.
No, and I'll say the same thing but only when I'm at home usually. I don't know why, but that was always a weird thing. I never liked putting on cans and like completely not being able to hear anything, but only when I'm like in my office at home.
Yeah.
When I'm at work or whatever, I mean, I picked up I dropped the cord down my shirt because, when I was working a lot, like it catches on it and that's super annoying. But yeah, I got to the point where it was earbuds all the time.
So anytime I hear one of those songs that are played at Publix, I'll hear them on the radio or I'll like go into Publix and hear them. And I instantly am transported back to working overnight shifts, doing manual labor. And,
I can say, is that kind of like one of those things, like it's not a great memory?
right. It brings me back to like being like super poor and
Tired. And
like exhausted all the
just
time.
grinding it out, just trying to get it done.
Exactly. And so every time I hear those songs, it like brings me back to like a stressful time in my life, and it's not great.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, there was a point in time in my life where I was working 2 jobs at one time, and it was, I'd work all day long, and then I would go work a night shift because we had just had our first kid, and I was broke as junk. And I don't remember very much what happened during those times because literally I would wake up, go to work, then go to work again, and go home and go to sleep. And like, same thing. If a song reminds me of that time, I was like, there's months of my life that are almost like blackouts because it was just grinding, like just working. And it was Groundhog Day every single day to the point where like, I don't know what happened during that time except for work. That's all that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one that, on a lighter note, is the sound that a disc makes when it hits the chains in disc golf.
When it hits the chains. I was about to say there's a lot of sounds it makes where it's bad.
Yeah, when it hits the chains in disc golf, it's a very unique sound that you really won't hear anywhere else.
No.
It's a very specific sound, and I thought it's just one of those things where like when you hear it, you automatically know like, oh, someone just hit the chains in disc golf.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the first time I've ever aced after all these years of playing, it was only sound because it was a blind shot. So I just threw it, and then I hear, because it's basically you just hear chains get absolutely destroyed by plastic. You hear this like combination of metal and chains, and it's really loud. And so I ran down there, and it was in the basket. So yeah, I definitely could see that.
Yeah, it's really cool to find those unique sounds that unless you do a very specific thing, you're never going to hear that sound. But once you do that thing, you can never unhear it. Like I can mentally hear that sound just thinking about it.
That's a cool thing they do on this show too, where they have the whole guess what this non sequitur sound is.
Yep.
There's a podcast for kids called Brains On, and they do mystery sounds on there as well. And it's always super fun to me because I'm like, ooh, I think I know this, and I'm way wrong sometimes.
Yep.
I had no idea what that sound was from this episode. It kind of sounded like a couple things that
I listened to too many episodes. I don't remember which one this one was, but I do like that. And some of them, I think I know what they are, but I haven't been listening to them in order, so I don't know what the answer is.
Or like on time to try and get the shirt.
Yeah, that too. Like I'm like, dang it, I think I know this one, but it was like 3 months ago.
Yeah, too late.
But all in all, I mean, it's an amazing show. If you're interested at all about like the power of sound in your life, because I mean, it's all around you all the time. And to the point where there's things you don't even realize that you are always taking in constantly through, your ears. And it's an amazing show.
There's people that have like bulldogs and they snore all the time. So when their dog passes away, they can't sleep because they're used to their dog snoring, like when they're going to sleep. So there's like a lot of things like that you never know until it's gone, and then you hear the silence. And this just reminds me, in my office, there's white noise machines on half of my office, but not on the other half. I didn't know that for the first year and a half working there.
Like corporate ones? Or just like there's one person that has one?
No, corporate. Like it's in the roof. There's these like white noise machines, and it just sounds like almost like air conditioning's on almost, where it's just like you can hear it if you know it's there, but I never knew it was there. But you go over to the other side and it's really quiet. And I was like, why does it sound so quiet over here all the time? Someone's like, there's no white noise machines over here. I was like, there's not white noise machines on our side. And they're like, yeah, there are. As soon as they said it, I go over there, I can hear it every time.
It blows your mind, man.
Yeah.
Like I realized, I forget where I heard about it, but somebody was talking about how if you're used to a sound or going to sleep to a sound, that if you get a noise, white noise machine or even an app on your phone, it would help you go to sleep a lot. So I was recently traveling and I woke up real early and I'm like, I want to sleep on the plane. So I downloaded an app. Dude, I slept like a baby on that plane. And I cannot usually sleep on a plane because you're right next to somebody.
Yeah,
that's real weird.
What was the app? It was just circus music?
Yeah, that's...
It's like, I'm so relaxed.
That would make me go crazy.
Yeah.
No, but it was literally just the sound of a fan because I go to sleep to a fan every night. And a lot of times my wife's like, don't turn the fan on. I'm like, I can't go to sleep without the fan. She's like, but it's cold. I'm like, I'm not even hot. I need to hear it.
Put on another blanket.
Give her my blankets, what I usually do. But it's an amazing show. Dallas Taylor does an amazing job, and everyone else behind the show. And everyone should give it a listen.
Absolutely.
So this week's Audible recommendation is Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. So I remember this being like a lot of schools would make you read this.
Sure.
And so it was one of those ones I never really wanted to read just because it seemed like required reading. But later on in my adult life, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back because some of these, they were poignant things. And some of the classics that I read were really good. And some of them were like, man, why?
Yeah.
But this one changed my perspective on like so much stuff. It was just such a powerful book. And there's a lot of trigger stuff with racism, things like that. But it's something that, I don't know, I feel like it's very important for us not to like whitewash stuff and act like things weren't bad at some point.
Yeah.
And so I think I think everybody should read this.
Yeah, I've actually never read that book, so I'm going to have to check that out.
You really do need to read it. But speaking of Audible and things like that, I forgot that every month they give you not only one credit, which is to get any book you want, which using our code you could get for free, but also you get 2 free Audible originals because they have like a curated list of the stuff that they made. I think there's like 15 to 20 to choose from, and you can choose 2 of those. And one of the cool things that I really like about Audible is even if you like cancel your subscription, so let's say you got the free book and the 2 free originals, and you cancel your subscription before you had to pay anything, you get to keep those. Like, you actually own it because you paid for it, which a lot of these other, I'm not saying audiobook in general, but a lot of other things, once you're done with your subscription, you lose everything you paid for. Like, let's say Netflix, you wanted to watch those shows, you can't watch them anymore when you're not paying anymore. Mm-hmm. But with Audible, when you pick a book, it's your book. And I think that's awesome. So if you want to get a free book on the PDS, go to audibletrial.com/PDS and you can get a free book.
Yep. Right there in the show notes. Go into your podcast catcher, click the link.
So I would like to recommend our next revisit, and it is Ear Hustle.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about meeting Nigel and Erlon at Podcast Movement. It was amazing. But seeing how the show has progressed, and to me, it's just a very revolutionary show. I think that it's going to be revered for a long time to come because of the issues it's able to bring forward. And it's just so effective at storytelling at the same time. And kind of, it's effective at storytelling for a group that you've never heard stories like this about, and you've never humanized in the way that this show does. And the episode we're going to recommend is called Kissing the Concrete. And so we're really looking forward to talking about Ear Hustle again. The first time we heard it, we were all just absolutely hooked on it. So we felt like it was time to bring it back for another conversation.
Oh, yeah. And the interesting part about this one is it is in the second era of Ear Hustle where Erlon is out.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really, really different to listen to.
It sounds awesome. I'm super excited to hear it.
All right. And remember,
there's always more to discover. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We have a few things we'd like to tell you. First, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at the PDS Official or in our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club.
Secondly, leaving a rating or review on iTunes helps tremendously in giving us visibility and also visibility to the podcast that we recommend. You can also check out our Patreon page to get exclusive bloopers, old episode archives, and other exclusive content while supporting the show.
Finally, seriously, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you about what you love about podcasts. And thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.